My name is Nuno Garoupa. I am an economist by training, but I currently work in the United States at a law school, George Mason University Law School, and I am a professor of law where I teach economics for lawyers, and I am the associate dean for faculty. So let's talk about law and economics, because that's how economists become involved with law. Law and economics is the application of economics, microeconomic theory, from standard demand theory principles to asymmetric information or market failures to legal problems. Obviously, most economists know the standard applications in antitrust law, tax law, regulation, but we can also apply the same principles to any area of the law. We could ask questions such as, why do people get married and why do people get divorced? That will be family law and economics. Or why do people sign contracts, or why do people breach contracts? That would be contract law and economics. Or if we have a car accident, who should pay for my car? That's tort law and economics. So any area of economics can be subject to analysis by microeconomic principles. Clearly, in the last couple of years, we also have been influenced, like many areas in economics, by behavioral economics. So the recent trends are looking at behavioral aspects of, say, contracts or torts, or also now, due to technology and information, we also have the expansion of what we call empirical legal studies, that is, econometrics of legal studies. So within law and economics, we have topics that are consensual, like why do people sign contracts? And every economist basically argues that people sign contracts because there are opportunity costs and you need trust. Other examples are policy examples where things are much more controversial. For example, Donahue and Levitt have developed this empirical analysis by which they try to explain the decline of crime in the United States after the 1990s as a consequence of Roe versus Wade, that is, the legalization of abortion in the 1970s. This has been a tremendous controversial paper, a tremendous influential paper, and of course has generated tons of empirical analysis on the extent to which these effects are A, do they exist, B, are they mere correlation, or is there a causation effect there, as Donahue and Levitt suggested about 15 years ago. So methodologically, law and economics is part of what I would call applied microeconomics. So anyone trained on applied microeconomics will immediately recognize the same principles in articles written by economists. The difference is that the discipline also involves a lot of law and law professors. That means economists should be able to combine traditional methodology of microeconomics with institutional knowledge of how the law operates. There are many misunderstandings, even in very solid and famous papers, say Becker, 1968 on crime, because there was no solid understanding of the typology of crime, for example, in the United States. And in fact, when he uses an example of crime, it's actually not a crime, it's just a negative externality. So that demands that on top of economic jargon and concepts, people have some acquaintance with legal concepts. Now, one development that anyone looking at law and economics notices immediately is that most economists doing this area in the United States are in law schools, whereas in Europe they tend to be in economic departments. There are different explanations for this, but I think the most obvious is the way universities are organized in the US versus in Europe. In Europe, departments tend to be much more self-contained, particularly the law school is usually alone, a standalone unit with very little interaction with other units across campus. Whereas in the United States, because it's a professional school, that is, the idea is that law is not science, it's a profession, then they actually require other social scientists to be around, economists, political scientists, sociologists. And that's why we can observe that most law and economics in Europe is usually located in econ departments, eventually business schools, whereas in the United States, by vast majorities in law schools, sometimes in econ departments or business schools. So I've been working in law and economics in the last 20-25 years, and there are two types of changes in this 25 years. On one hand, obviously you have the impact of changes broadly in line with economics, the behavioral economics, the development of new econometric approaches, the whole game theory revolution, experimental economics, all of that has impacted the field. Then there are changes that are more specific to law and economics, and I can think of two. One is the expansion of data. We now have much more data than 25 years ago. 25 years ago, there was no data about legal systems, for example, in Europe. Today, the Council of Europe has a huge data set with information about legal systems across Europe. This allows for a lot of empirical analysis that was just impossible 25 years ago. And the other one has to do with what we call the legal origins theory, or the LSV hypothesis, which is that law and legal systems in particular explain different patterns of economic development. This has been tremendously influential in the late 1990s, early 2000s in terms of policy, but also in academic debate. There's tons of papers now discussing the extent to which development patterns and the way countries in Africa or in Asia or in Latin America have developed as a function of, say, British versus Spanish law or British versus French law. And this is by no means closed field. It's still tremendously influential, and it's still evolving into some consensus that hopefully in the next couple of years will be shared by most economists.